one race, competing visions for the future of New York City. A Democratic socialist, a guardian angel, a three-time governor, and the incumbent. Welcome to Battleground, New York City, the fight for your vote. I'm S.E. Cupp. You were at candidate events today. Tell me what you heard and what you saw.
Mayors have three jobs. You got to keep crime low, quality of life high, and the tax base grow.
And there are going to be strange twists and turns before the votes are counted and the dust settles.
I think that much we can count on. Let's get right to it. Welcome to Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote, where we have just 75 days until the all-important New York City mayoral election. Why are we covering it? Because it's not just a local race. From DC to Dallas, all eyes are on this election. We've got it all covered for you right here. I'm S.E. Cupp. Let's get right to it. Later in today's show, we'll talk to the Queens Borough president about his decision to back frontrunner Zohran Mamdani and the issues most important to his constituents who live in the largest borough in New York City. But first, as always, let's get to the latest news from the campaign trail. Joining me now is Hannah Fierick, City Hall reporter with the New York Post. Hannah, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. So first up, the latest news. We spoke about this a bit yesterday, but the scope is growing. New York City Mayor independent candidate Eric Adams has some associates that are facing new charges and indictments. According to the New York Post, where you are a reporter, his former right hand, Ingrid Lewis Martin, allegedly accepted more than $75,000 in bribes in exchange for political favors, and she will face charges in 4 separate criminal indictments. We also know she's just among 7 people facing new charges. What does this mean for Eric Adams's campaign?
This isn't a great look for the Adams campaign. You know, I think a lot of his idea with this new campaign has been really about, moving away from that sort of scandal and bribery and things that have kind of overtaken some of his reputation. And I think, he's in the past couple of months done a pretty good job of kind of distancing himself. There was the earlier in the year when his case got dismissed, there was some chatter about Trump being involved in that dismissal. But now moving forward, it really seems like, he's been able to talk about his record with housing, especially in public safety. His hiring of Commissioner Tisch has been really positive for his mayoralty. And so now with the campaign to kind of have all of this scandal surrounding him, and kind of reminding voters that, this stuff kind of seems to follow him wherever he goes. I don't think if I were Adams' campaign right now, I would be excited or, this is kind of their worst nightmare right now. And then we have that crazy story yesterday with Winnie Greco as well.
Oh, let's get into that because Hannah, I saw this yesterday or maybe I saw it this morning. I forget and thought, what is happening? A very bizarre story. Winnie Greco is an Adams ally. Apparently handed a city reporter, actually a reporter we know, we've had her on, Katie Honan, handed her a bag of potato chips with cash stuffed in it. Katie tried to give it back, said, I can't accept this. I'm a reporter. This person, Winnie Greco, insisted she accept. I mean, tell us this whole story. It's crazy to me.
Yeah, this is a really bizarre story that kind of came into development yesterday evening. Earlier in the day, we were up in Harlem. Mayor Adams was opening his 2nd campaign office in Manhattan, his 4th so far on the campaign trail. And that's where Winnie Greco was. For those who don't know, Winnie Greco used to work in the Adams administration, and she has since come on. She was raided by the feds during that time of scandal in his last year, and basically, she's now come back onto the scene in a volunteer capacity. So we've been seeing a lot of her at these events.
So technically, she's just a volunteer right now.
Yes, yeah. She's just a volunteer, and she tries to keep a pretty low profile.
That is good news for him. Because tell us what she tried to do.
Yeah, so she tried to, Katie Honan, one of my colleagues in City
Yeah.
Hall, she was basically at a Whole Foods, and Winnie Greco offered her a bag of chips. They had planned to meet. She thought maybe Winnie was going to give her, some information, a tip, normal reporter
Yeah.
things, but that was not the case. Winnie met her there, handed her a bag of sour cream and onion potato chips.
It was opened.
And,
It
sorry?
was opened. It was an open bag of
It was
chips, right?
open.
Uh-huh.
It was an open bag of chips, and Katie was basically said, Winnie, I can't take this. I don't want this. We're not, as journalists, we're not allowed to receive gifts really of any kind. Now, if she took maybe one potato chip, that wouldn't be a big deal. But she was like, I don't want your bag of open potato
Yes.
chips, right? So Winnie more or less made her grab the bag. Katie then goes to throw it away. Secondhand account, obviously, but Katie then goes to throw it away, and she notices a red envelope full of cash. I believe it was like $100 bills and like $200 worth of $20 bills, so like $300 in total. She kind of like doesn't know what to do, and ends up calling her editor. They ended up getting the Department of Investigation involved.
Yeah.
Definitely a really crazy thing to happen. This former aide who had already been kind of on the radar of, definitely on the radar of the Department of Investigation during the initial bribery Adams scandal. And now we have her, offering a reporter money. That's really just kind of unheard of. And her lawyer did, she immediately contacted her lawyer, Winnie did. And
yes, we know her lawyer as well. It's Stephen Brill.
Yes,
it's amazing. And what she is, I'm told what she is saying is, I didn't mean anything by it. I was just looking for a friend. I'm just trying to make a friend. Let me just tell you, not you, Hannah, because you know this, but to our viewers and listeners, reporters are not your friends. Okay. It's 101 in politics. Reporters are not your friends. We are real good at making you think that we are sometimes, but we are not your friends. I mean, what a bizarre thing to happen.
Yes, definitely really unheard of. And, her lawyer said that it might have been some sort of a tradition, but,
yeah,
that
the traditional $300 cash in the potato chip bag. Okay, one more for the Adams campaign. Daily News is reporting he's leaning toward, quote, safe and affordable for his ballot line versus, quote, end anti-Semitism. For people who don't understand, what is the ballot line and why is this important?
Yeah, the ballot line is what voters see when they go into the to the ballot box, right?
Like next to his name.
They see that next to his name, correct. It's like right next to his name, to the right. And so they see that and they kind of think that's, what they're running on. We've seen Curtis Lewa is doing, he's running as a Republican. He has one for Republican, and then for independent, he's going for animal rights because he thinks that's more, of a middle of the road thing. And Eric Adams, he has wanted to run on two, but both as an independent. One is protect and serve. One is end anti-Semitism. And it seems like the BOE is not going to allow him to have both of those to the right of his name. But what they have said is they'll let him have one of them directly underneath his name.
Okay.
And then one to the side.
Because they're independent candidates. So, normally you'd have Democrat next to your name, Republican next to your name. When you're independent, for example, Andrew Cuomo's is going to be fight and deliver. These aren't just cutesy monikers. These are the things on the ballot that is telling a voter, this is what this person stands for in lieu of a party.
Right. It's equivalent to like the party association, but you're an independent, correct?
So more of, kind of a small blow to Eric Adams' campaign, a campaign that is dealing with many blows as of late. Hannah Fierick, we really appreciate you being on, and we really appreciate all your reporting. Continue to get out there, pound that pavement, talk to voters, and come back and tell us what you're hearing. Sound good?
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Up next, Queensborough President Donovan Richards talks about the issues most important to the people of the world's borough, Queens, New York.
We have an obligation to stand together as a borough, to stand for the best candidate who represents the very values that this community represents. And that is Zohran Mamdani.
We're back with Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote, where we're laser focused on the New York City mayoral race. And joining me now for the bigger picture is Queensborough President Donovan Richards. Mr. Richards, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I understand you're a busy man. You're on the run. You're in between things. Well, we've got you in your car, and that is fine. We're just happy you're with us. We have viewers tuning in everywhere from Tacoma to Tampa because everyone is focused on this race. So I think before we get into it, it's important to let people know what your unique role here is. What does a New York City borough president do?
That's a loaded question, but two things I would say. We're naturally the defenders of our borough, and we're also the biggest cheerleaders. You know, we manage a budget. I've allocated more than $400 million across schools and parks and housing development projects. We also oversee part of the land use process. Although they say it's ceremonial to a degree, it's really what you make of the job. And I think we've navigated utilizing this position to really bring the bacon home. We're going to build the first cancer center in Queens. So we're able to advocate at every level of government, whether it's the governor, whether it's working with the mayor to make sure that we strengthen our borough.
Yeah, because a lot of people might not understand New York City is a city of 5 boroughs. Queens is the biggest. They're almost individual cities in themselves. And so it takes a village, as they say.
Right. And I would just add, you know, I oversee 2.4 million people. you
Right,
know,
exactly, which is
and
bigger than most major cities.
exactly,
Yeah, and you're
exactly.
a
So
city
it's
in
a
the
lot to
city.
navigate. Exactly, but it's the best job I've ever had in my life.
That's great. Okay, so last week you endorsed Zohran Mamdani, and you said 2 things: that he inspired hope, and the last person to do that for you was President Obama in 2008. We've been hearing this a lot. The comparisons, the feeling that Zohran Mamdani is sort of awakening in the city, I'm being told, is very much like Obama. And in fact, we heard from one person who said was too young for Obama, but said, I remember my mom looking at Obama with tears in her eyes. That's the way I'm looking at Mamdani. So how do you see them as similar?
No, I think we were going through a very tough and tumultuous time even back in '08. And I volunteered on the campaign. And remember, we were in Hillarytown, New York
Right.
City. It was not popular. So my predecessor in the city council actually was one of 2 elected officials in New York City who endorsed Obama back
Mm-hmm.
then. So I volunteered. It was the first time I actually probably even petitioned for a presidential
Mm.
candidate. And I remember being at supermarkets, and it would cut across color lines where even there were African Americans who said, "You're wasting your time on this line." But he had given me this hope. And the night of his win, I'll never forget being on Farmers Boulevard in Queens and running out of our volunteer office and jumping up on buses and just to see the
Yeah.
excitement during a dark time. So I think what we're seeing at the federal level right
Mm-hmm.
now, he spoke to a lot of people, and in particular young people. And you know, people get caught up in the titles of DSA, WFP. No, these kids don't know what the hell that
Uh-huh.
is. There were people who genuinely just felt during this time when Trump is stepping on our very values that we needed a change. And that's why Andrew Cuomo did not win, and that's why Eric Adams is having a hard time.
Yeah, I mean, there's no denying, we talk to voters, there's no denying that there's this excitement for Mamdani, and the Democrats nationally are struggling a bit. This seems to be sort of a ray of hope for the party. I'm wondering though, is it just the hope and change, the promise, or do you endorse his policies as well?
Yeah, I listen, it's a mixed bag, right? You're never going to agree with
Okay.
everybody on every single policy. But we could talk about affordability. Queens is building more housing, including in Zohran's old assembly district, than any other borough. We have over 50,000 units either approved or in the pipelines to build in this borough. So we're growing and busting at the seams. I'm the former zoning chairman of the city council. And, you know, one of our first meetings, I was actually giving him a little knowledge on policy because I'm very steeped in
Uh-huh.
policy. So I absolutely agree with that. We can argue, does a rent freeze, does it help or does it hinder? It's a mixed bag there because you have different landlords. You have small landlords who are mom and pop landlords.
Right.
Everybody's not the real estate board of New York. So he's gonna have to navigate and learn different constituencies. And one of the things I appreciate is that he is getting around and listening.
Mm,
And I really appreciate that. On policing, I was the public safety chairman of the city council. Absolutely, we should be sending mental health professionals in with police officers, by the way.
okay.
And we did that in the city council. I did a pilot. We did a pilot in Staten Island, for instance, where that actually was happening.
Hmm.
So these are not, nothing I've heard is, I've said people think his policies are earth shattering. These are all things that we were either enacting or working on in the city council back in my day, and policies that we still believe in, even in my position as borough president.
Got it. What about decriminalizing prostitution? This is something that Zohran Mamdani is into. As you know, Roosevelt Avenue in Queens is one of the largest illegal red light districts. It operates in broad daylight. Do you want more of that for Queens?
Well, let me say this. Let me start with this. First of all, we should be going after the Johns.
Mhm.
Many of these women who are being human
Yeah.
trafficked, uh, are, you can't deal with we got to take on the
Hmm.
traffickers, right?
Hmm.
And then you forget that we had a big influx of asylum seekers that came in, and I said it very early on. If they can't work, what are they going to
Mm,
do? You're going to resort to the underworld. So we have to look at it holistically. And mind you, if you talk to some of them, they have to pay, the mules that snuck them into the country, and they're threatening to kill their families back home.
yes.
So we have to take a nuanced approach here. Get people jobs, enable them to work. Many of them want to work, and go after the Johns.
Great. Stay right there because I have a bunch more questions for you, and I'm really, really glad you're here. You bring so much context from your borough to this race. So the battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. We'll be right back after this. We're back with Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. One last time with Donovan Richards, Queens Borough President. I have to ask you about the Andrew Cuomo Mamdani back and forth over his apartment in Astoria, which is a neighborhood in Queens. Tell us about the cost of living for residents in Queens and whether $2,300 a month rent in a rent stabilized apartment is that affordable?
That's not even a steal, to tell you the truth. I mean, 2,300 is still pricey in Queens, and I'm sure it's not a five-bedroom apartment. And let me just start with this. I like to look at
Yeah.
facts. He was not always, and we could always get into the conversation. Well, he grew up with the I mean, that's null and void when you're out of your parents' home. And last I checked, he started at a salary of like $40,000. And I know for a fact, I think he was at the Brooklyn Defenders or one of those organizations out there, the Brooklyn Housing Organization. They literally went into union contracts, like I think literally like last
Mm.
year or the year before, to try to raise the salaries and to collect a bargain with their employees. So starting at 44,000, the facts speak for
Hmm.
themselves. He was eligible for the rent stabilized apartment. But even on a six-figure salary, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm just thinking of my wife and I, and we're doing relatively okay. But by the time you pay the mortgage, which my mortgage is, more than obviously his rent stabilized
Hmm.
apartment, you pay the water, you got to bring groceries
Yeah.
in, you got to feed the dog. This you ain't high living off a assembly member
Yeah.
salary.
Yes.
So, but I always count my blessings that, listen, I'm not at a $30,000 salary like I was in the city council as a staffer,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah, 44,000 ain't a lot. I'm telling you, but it's better if you have it. Better to have something than nothing.
How is Andrew Cuomo, who has huge name ID in New York, but also very high unfavorables, how is he received in Queens, where he was born?
Well, let me say this. You know, it's a mixed bag, because he naturally did relatively well in the African American enclaves in Southeast Queens. But it was also generational.
Yeah.
So young people voted for Zohran, like if you were under 40, and if you were over 40, your triple prime voters, you voted for Cuomo.
Mhm.
Now the problem for Cuomo was that he did relatively no campaigning and no outreach anywhere. He just assumed that his name ID was going to equal a vote.
Right.
I think maybe I got 2 pieces of mail from
Mm.
him. Never a door knock. And what Zohran did is commendable. I mean, he had thousands, an army of thousands of volunteers hitting doors. And I'm not saying that they did that relatively in Southeast Queens, by the way, which is the Black enclave.
Mhm.
And that's something Zohran and I discussed, in our early conversations. We got to get you in front of people. You got to do the outreach here. And I think relatively he's going to do well. But Zohran won Queens,
Yeah.
so that should
Right.
tell you all you need to know.
We had Joseph Hernandez on yesterday. As you know, he's running as an independent. He is also from Queens. His family fled Cuba because of socialism. He says the kind of socialism Mamdani is suggesting will be dangerous for New York. What do you say to that?
I think when I ran for borough president, people used the same stuff.
Mhm.
I was told that when I'm borough president, there will be police cars burning, and people sent mailers out. One of my opponents, my Republican opponent, I remember her sending. He's a socialist. She sent a mail piece out with police cars burning. She sent the Halloween piece out about me. Yeah, like it was a lot of fear. What Zohran is doing now is making sure he is reaching out to different constituencies that he naturally didn't talk
Mhm.
to. Now, let me talk about socialism, democratic socialism. We could go back to what they called Dr. King. They called Dr. King a socialist and a communist as
Mhm.
well. I don't think any of the policies that I'm hearing coming from this guy, free buses. I mean, we could argue we discussed it. How is he going to pay
Right.
for it? Okay, we could argue,
Yeah.
but if that's socialism, count me in. I want to get on the bus for free.
Yeah. Who doesn't?
Who wouldn't? I think most New Yorkers would agree they're socialists if they can get a free ride. If you're one of the 800,000 people getting on the bus in Queens every day, I think you would agree with this policy of socialism.
Everybody loves free stuff. It's always a question of who pays for
Exactly.
it ultimately. But you know that.
Exactly.
One more famous Queens resident that we should talk about, Donald Trump. He was also born in Queens. He wants to wade into this race because, as you know, and as we've discussed, this is becoming a national race. Should Donald Trump get into this race? And if he does, what advice would you give him?
Oh, hell yes,
Yeah,
he should get in the
I
race so
say
we can
that.
run the margins up. We could run the margins up in the election. Please come. Please back one of the other
Right.
opponents. Back Cuomo, back Adams.
No, you
We're
want
gonna
him to.
have a field
Yeah,
day with
exactly.
you. Oh yeah, I want him to back I want him to back our opponents.
I know.
Yes.
That's what we're hearing.
Endorse this independent guy who got in yesterday too. We welcome you, Don. Now we don't claim him in Queens no more. His passport has definitely expired here. That passport is like in Mar-a-Lago or whatever that
Trump's
place is.
right.
So that's his
Okay.
passport now.
Um,
But please get in.
like I mentioned, the whole nation's watching this race. Do you think that Democrats, as I said, a party that is they're struggling right now to figure out where to go? Do we go back to the center? Do we go to the far left? How do we get our momentum back? Should they nationalize Mamdani's race, or are there dangers there?
You can't bring a knife to a gunfight. And I think the Democrats, through all the stuff we're seeing every day, I mean, even down to Trump saying he's going into our museums, the
Right.
Smithsonian, which I've been to, by the
Mhm.
way. There's nothing woke about slavery.
Mhm.
There's nothing woke about seeing people hung. There's nothing woke about seeing my
Mhm.
ancestors, who labored in the cotton fields and also who built the White House that he's sleeping in
Mhm.
every day. There's nothing woke about that. Democrats got to get their
Mhm.
together, and we got to step up. People are looking for a fighter. What's interesting, and as we close up on this, I was speaking to my 86-year-old father-in-law, and he said he voted for Mamdani because AOC endorsed him, which was interesting. Guy from London
Mm.
by Jamaica. He voted for Mamdani because AOC's a fighter and we need a fighter in this country, and her stamp of approval meant something to an 86-year-old
Wow.
black man living in Far
Yeah.
Rockaway. I'm
Interesting. Listen, there are a
Case
lot of
closed.
colorful characters in this race. Lots
Yes.
and lots of contours. And that's why we're so glad that you were here to give us that context. Donovan Richards, Queensborough president, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll be back here tomorrow and every Monday through Friday for more in-depth conversation, context, and reporting right here on Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote.